Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Imprint. I'm very grateful to have you here today to talk about something that can sometimes get overlooked, but it is a really important part to growing a business. And that is to get publicity for your business. Because if people don't know that you exist, it's very hard to cut through. It's hard to get sales. It's hard to grow your business if you're not known for something. So how do you do that? Well, I wanted to bring on a guest today that is someone who's got a wealth of experience in this field. I know Lexi from many years ago now when I was working at Real Living magazine and she was working for Freedom as a publicist. And she then went on to work for the Williams-Sonoma umbrella of brands, which includes West Elm and Pottery Barn, and has worked for other big businesses, including David Jones, and now helps small businesses, boutique brands to get more publicity and really grow their business. And actually, after our conversation, she was telling me about how with one client, she has helped their business grow over 500%. So there is real power in really getting the word out about your brand, learning how to tell your story, learning how to know and identify what makes you unique. And we get into all of that today. Plus, Lexi shares some really practical tips and resources with you as well. So please enjoy my conversation with Lexi Kentmann. Hi, Lexi. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and really learn from your wealth of experience because, as I've mentioned in the intro, you have got a whole heap of experience working both with big brands in the world of PR and also smaller boutique brands and people within sort of the lifestyle, fashion sort of industries as well. So I think this is going to be really helpful and insightful for many people who are listening today. But as always, I like to start at the beginning and I like to kind of get a little bit of a picture about you and how you landed in this world. I think that it's always interesting to reflect on the journeys that people have taken and, when you were, I guess, in those school years about thinking like, what am I going to do when I leave school? What were you thinking you were going to go into and how did you end up in the world of PR?
Thank you for having me, Natalie. I'm excited to chat with you today. I grew up in Tamworth, the country music capital, with my mum and dad and my two older sisters. I've always been a bit of a nerd and I still am a nerd. I always loved reading. My favorite thing was lying on a spare bed in the sunshine in the sunroom, reading book after book. I'd love grabbing my mum's electric typewriter and typing out stories. That's such a strong memory for me. And then my dad worked in computers before computers, worked in IT. He used to bring home these big reams of computer paper, the ones that you could rip the sides down. And I loved mapping out little floor plans of dream houses and drawing. And that's how I spent my weekends when I was little. And then as I moved into high school, I loved spending time with friends, going to the movies. I worked at McDonald's. I was their youngest crew trainer, which is proud moment for me still. Worked on drive-through, just loved it. Such a dork, but I loved it. And then I really wanted to become an actor. But the careers advisor at school said, Alex, you are not going to make any money. Have a look at PR. And so I did. I looked at PR, really wanted to go to Newcastle Uni because my sister had been there and some of my friends were going there. So I ended up going to Newcastle. And then after about 3 months, realized this is not for me. I really did run away from Newcastle Uni. I asked a guy that lived in my dorm Can you drive me to the train station? Don't tell anyone where I've gone. I don't know why it was such a chaotic thing in my head, but I went home to mum and dad. 3 days later, the guy that ran the residencies rang my mum and dad and said, "Have you seen Alex anywhere? No one's seen her for a few days." And they were like, "Oh, yeah, she's at home with us." So the only time I went back to Newcastle Uni was to pack up my room, and then I was out of there. I went back to Tamworth, waitressed, did an online children's writing, like children's book writing course, and then did work experience with some PR agencies in Sydney. So I would come down to Sydney and work with them for a couple of weeks at a time. Um, really loved one agency, which was Mark Patrick Agency. This is back in, I think, 98. Um, and they knew that I wanted to move to Sydney, and they knew that I wanted to start university. So they ended up offering me a role. So I moved down, was the like junior burger there, studied full time, worked full time, do not recommend. But it was a really fun time. It was a really great agency to cut my teeth in with PR. I literally packed peanuts for a Charlie Brown show into jars, which I was thinking you couldn't do that anymore. You can't send out peanuts to people. Anaphylaxis, anyone. But I did that, and like just grew this network of contacts. That's where I started, and then went to Bangarra Dance Theatre, worked as a marketing coordinator there. Within 2 weeks of starting there, my manager left. So I was kind of left. I would have been about 22 at this time, just kind of blindly going, I don't know what I'm doing, and making things up as I went, sort of thing. And then I ended up leaving there after about 9 months, and working with the publicist that was Bangarra's publicist. She had a role, and I worked with the band publicist as well, and was still doing uni. And then after that, went to David Jones and kind of started in retail in house. So that's where it all began.
Okay, and just for international listeners, so
Yes.
Bangarra Dance Company, that's a very respected sort of like Indigenous dance company. They do incredible performances, and often like at the Opera House. I don't know if they were, exclusively there, but and David Jones is sort of basically like Australia's, what would you say would the equivalent be in America? Like something like Bergdorf Goodman or something, it's Saks.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those like high-end department stores, basically.
Yeah.
So very kind of prestigious companies. So let's just start with what is the difference between PR and a publicist? As a publicist, would you define that as someone that really looks after a personal brand versus PR is like a broader term for getting, publicity?
Publicist would be more about promotions and sharing events and activities that are coming up, whereas PR is more focused on credibility, building trust, and building those genuine relationships with media and therefore your customer as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then what happened after David Jones? Because when we met, which is probably going back about 15 years ago, something
Yep.
like that, you were working at Freedom, which
Yep.
is a very big Australian furniture company. It's sort of like a West Elm type company, I guess, for American listeners, that's sort of up above IKEA, but, or maybe like Restoration Hardware, somewhere in that kind of zone, mid-level in terms of furniture companies, I would say. And so that's where we met. We were like liaising a lot then because I was doing lots of styling using furniture, Freedom furniture products in my shoots and working on the magazine. So we kind of came into contact then. So was Freedom the next step after working at David Jones?
No, I then went to Houseman Communications. So that's a PR agency in Sydney, and worked on a range of brands like Elizabeth Arden, Unilever, which is Dove soap, Chic Quattro, a lot of FMCG brands, Kellogg, like really got a great breadth of experience there, did some really great things like launched Curious, which was Britney Spears fragrance, but without Britney Spears in the market. We did a big nightclub for teenagers, and it was, imagine this, 1,000 teenage girls coming to that 3-story building in Fox Studios for a nightclub, and then they wanted to leave, and we had to stand on the door and wait until each of their parents came and collected them. They were like, "We're just going to get out of here," and we were like, "No, you're not." It was
Oh my
crazy.
goodness.
Um, and then Chic Quattro was launching the first 4-bladed razor into the market. So we got men's grooming editors and flew them in like 4 blades, a helicopter up to somewhere in the Blue Mountains for a 4-course meal. And they had a real shave in a barber's chair. Really wild, like budgets back then. We don't have them anymore. So Houseman was another great experience, coming up with really great creative solutions to launch products into market. And then after Houseman, I went and had a baby, and then I think within about 6 months of having my son, was back freelancing and working with a dermal filler company, a beauty, which is West Elm, and going through the GFC, observing that people were still maintaining their dermal fillers but not paying their school fees. It was a wild, wild ride. And then after, I worked with them for quite a while, and then I ended up at Freedom 3 days a week as their PR manager, which then became their PR and social media manager. And I launched all their social media channels. And I probably should backtrack a little. During that time of mat leave and freelancing, I had a blog as well, which I launched because I didn't really fit into my local mothers group. So that helped me create all these real connections and hone my writing skills, but also get a first jump into social media and how that worked and how to build a community. So then I went to Freedom, and that was a really great period because there was a new set of buyers there. We were shifting the brand, and this is not my words, so no one get mad about it, but it was about that time when we were shifting from being beige into something that would stand up on a world stage. So we did a lot of limited edition collections, added a lot of color and a lot of excitement back into that brand, which was a really great period of time. And also launching all those social media channels for them was really exciting, and you're really testing and learning a lot during that period. And I was there for about 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go into a little bit more in depth in like some of the strategies and that, but just again, like maybe going back a step when you were working at Houseman Communications. And I remember myself dealing with Houseman when I was working in magazines and, for different events and so on. So what, like when you're working at a company like that, that's really focused on different campaigns, like what does it look like from that point of view? Like a client comes to you, and is it often that they've got a particular product they want to launch, and so then it's creating a strategy around that product? Or is it that like you are just working on ongoing visibility for the brand, or is it a little bit of both? Like, in the world of PR, like what does that look like when you're working with an agency? And I know obviously this is a while ago, but I'm sure there's still some foundational elements that are still there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, generally, it definitely did vary depending on client to client. Some of them would just come with a project, but a lot of them were retainer clients. So it would be that ongoing piece that they would want to have that visibility. And then they would have launches sprinkled in as well. So it would be fitting back those launches so that they're making a big splash and standing out from their competitors, and also just making people sit up and pay attention to them in that general, like, always on strategy. But it would be about coming up with newsworthy strategies that people are going to go back and write about, and want to hear more from what else is that brand coming up with. So Elizabeth Arden, for example, did Britney Spears, and then we did Catherine Zeta-Jones. She ended up being a big stakeholder in that brand. So day-to-day projects would really vary. And it was like long hours, but it was fun, and you got to work with a lot of great creatives coming up with these concepts for the brands as well.
And so I'm guessing, like in those days, back in the old days,
Yep, yep.
because we're both old days now. Um, I know, crazy. But so I guess that was a heavy influence on, or a heavy focus, I should say, on press. So getting in magazines, newspapers, radio, television, that kind of world of press. Whereas, as you said, when you started to work with Freedom, this is when you were starting to launch their social channels, or really trying to kind of get more visibility for those. And obviously that really has in many ways eclipsed press, I feel. It'd be interesting to get your take on that now. So let's kind of then go to like the Freedom days of, like how did, what were some of the strategies that you were using or doing during that time? Like how were you creating visibility for the brand, or raising, like you say, it was really about transforming the brand, getting a different type of awareness around it.
That was such an exciting time because social media was pretty new, and it was, I'm going to say it, a lot easier than it is now because bloggers were they were, a lot of them were mums working from home, and we had real tangible relationships, and it wasn't monetized like it is now. So the way we, like, I would find a product that was coming out for the season. There were 4 seasonal launches, and I would go, I want 50 of these, and then we would pack them up beautifully and send them out to influencers. And very simple, they would then photograph them if they loved it, and share it on social. And that was how we built our community pretty quickly and all organically, because everyone felt excited that they were receiving these goods in the mail. Like, who doesn't love a surprise? So it was super different. And then also just looking at, you've got your catalog and that's ticking that box, but what else could we be shooting that's special, unique content that not everyone's going to see, and sharing that on social, or really taking people behind the scenes in the shoots so that they're getting to see that, what's actually happening on the shoot, how do you get that shot. And then also it ended up being influencers are house proud. They wanted to share their homes, so then they would photograph products in their home, and that was how we generated this beautiful user-generated content, was by supplying them with product and then celebrating that on those channels. Yeah, it was so much simpler back then. Send a sofa out and you're winning. Doesn't work like that anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll get into how that has evolved and what strategies people need to think about now. And so then after Freedom, you then worked with another really big brand. So do you want to talk about that, and what were some of the strategies and the campaigns that you were doing during that time?
Yep. So after Freedom, I went over to Williams Sonoma, which is the mother company for Pottery Barn, West Elm, Pottery Barn Kids, and Williams Sonoma. So
So
4 brands in one, was kind of like another agency approach. And we had a really small team, and then no external agencies either. So we did everything in-house. So in-house and agency. That was at an early time when the brands had, I think they'd been in market 2 years. And we were really focused at that point on localizing and helping Australians understand those brands, and again, like, fall in love with those brands. And also showing that the brands were invested in Australia and why they were invested in Australia, and doing that in a real way, like an authentic way. And we did that by creating menus of events in store. So I feel like that old school retail experience has kind of died. So we
died.
kind of brought a bit of magic back to retail. One of the things about West Elm is you can shop with a dog. You can bring your dog in, as long as it's not crazy dog. But we celebrated that by hosting a pup party in store, and it was in, I think, 3 stores across Australia. So we had, it was called a pup up, and we had people, artisan makers that like made dog collars or dog biscuits or dog bowls. They had their own market within the store, and they did that like with at no cost. So it was all about celebrating that local community. We had photographers to take a pup portrait. Um, we had people wanting to bring their cats in, but can you imagine how crazy that would be? And then we also worked with influencers that had dogs. So they came in, had a bit of a photo opportunity, and that helped promote the event as well. So they were real kind of, I guess, grassroots in a way of connecting with the community, but in a really nice, fun way.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that it's really about using creativity with like how can we make this fun? How can we get visibility? How can we leverage the audiences of other people out there to kind of to spread the word? And I think that seems to be something that's consistent is really using people as like leverage in a way of like leveraging their audiences and getting that exposure and getting the word out. And I think that even though, you know, obviously they're very big brands, it's still about, you know, making an impression in a local market. So, you know, that's obviously a huge American company, huge American brand, and sort of becoming more well known within the Australian landscape as a company. I remember there were some events as well with Sabella Court. Is that right? What did they look like?
Yes, so we Pottery Barn is a very American aesthetic, so everything's quite matchy matchy. And we wanted to kind of reimagine it in an Australian way. Obviously, you know, Australians live really differently to Americans. Our style's super different. I would say we have a relaxed sophistication. Our homes are really beautiful, but they're not perfectly um, matchy matchy. They're collected. We might have my grandmother's meat safe, and then I've got some things that I've collected from France, and then I've got some newer like IKEA pieces mixed in. And we're proudly like bowerbirds. So we worked with Sabella to kind of reimagine what Pottery Barn would be for Australia, and then shot I would call a mini campaign with her, and then launched a book that was available in store called The Collected Home. And then that was also a series of content that we released via social, on the website, and through emails to customers. So it was this beautiful A3 size book that we gave out to customers, and we also sent it out to media to kind of share, hey, this is a fresh take on Pottery Barn. And then Sabella kind of handpicked the products she wanted to shoot, and then hosted a media event to celebrate that. That's how that came about. And then we also worked with a range of influencers to share Pottery Barn within their homes as well. And that created that kind of magazine-like content for Pottery Barn in Australia, which excitingly informed the mothership back in the US. They saw it and went, oh, why aren't we're using this? We should be like tying back to this as well. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah. And so what would you say from working with some of these big brands and sort of working, you know, with them, with the resources and the teams that they have, what are some of like the big ideas that they have or execute on or strategies that they have that could be interesting or helpful for smaller businesses to think about? I think, you know, when you've got a small business, you're kind of doing everything, and it's like, you know, that you want to do publicity, you know, that you need to do PR and, you know, try and get the word out there, but it's sometimes can feel like I don't even know where to start. You know, what are some of those kind of overarching themes that you would suggest? And then we can kind of get into like, because you do obviously now do work with boutique brands and, you know, more sort of specific strategies perhaps, but, you know, like that overarching, like what do they do well, or what, you know, what are some of the processes or the systems that they have in place to make these things happen?
I think it's about looking at what is unique to your brand, and like if you lined your brand up against competitors, what makes you special and stand out, and then really celebrating that. I think you like a lot of brands have started to kind of have this homogenous look. And I think it's about shifting from that and going, I can be me or my brand really proudly and look differently. And that's a good thing because it'll be more memorable. And I think the way that can play out is who you partner with. So whether that's influencers that might not be your main run of the mill people, but someone that's a little bit different. Photography, so shooting beautiful professional photographs is really important. And then I think it's also about diving into who your customer is and respecting who your customer is and celebrating your customer, because you were there for the grace of the customer. And if you didn't have that customer, your business wouldn't be around. And I think it's not necessarily asking them what they want, but it's just just looking after that relationship and sharing things with them, and taking them again behind the scenes of your brand. Doesn't have to be too personal. Like, you don't have to get on Instagram live and pour your heart out, but it's about having an authentic relationship with them. And that could be like hosting an event for them that's curated especially for whoever that is. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, no, I love those tips. And so, what about then? As I mentioned, now you've kind of gone out on your own, and you really focus on working with boutique brands, helping them get more visibility for their brands. So, as such, you've really get sort of like a behind the scenes look at all of these small businesses. What they're struggling with, what they're doing well, what's working, what's not. What are some of the most kind of common things that you do to help people get visibility for these smaller brands? Like, what's often the first step that you're kind of helping them with? Does that happen? Like, is it like almost it's like without a doubt, I go into a business and it's like, okay, we need to get this piece of the puzzle right before we
Yep.
even start to do that. Like, does that happen, or what does it look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I had one client who came to me and said, I don't know how to build a brand, but you know how to build a brand. Can you help me? And basically, can you do it? So I did. I loved doing that. I did the website, did all the emails, did the social, produced all the shoots, did all the influencer interactions with them. But my big thing is you don't have to do it all. And I think people see brands doing TikTok and they're doing Instagram and they're doing everything. You don't have to do it all. Like, I think going back to your customer, knowing where your customer is spending time, focus on that. Like, emails and Instagram are a really great place to start. You don't have to be doing TikTok just because everyone's doing TikTok. And then doing those things to a really good level so that you're not spread thin. And then also having the consistency when you're doing those things is really important. So don't just drop off the face of the earth. You want to be posting on Instagram a few times a week, not once a month, because you want to be keeping your brand top of mind with people. But it is about doing things well, but not having to do it all.
Yeah. And do you find, because I mean, you have a love of books and words and all of those things. Do you find that people struggle to talk about their brand in terms of like, how do I talk about my brand on my website, or talk about my brand on socials, or know which words to use? Like, do you help people with that area, or is it more project campaigns or launch campaigns?
I'm pretty broad in what I like, the services I offer. So definitely can write for customers and help them shape how they want to speak about their brand. And I do have a lot of brands come to me and say, I find it really hard talking about myself. And I can totally relate to that, because I had a boss once say to me, oh, Lexi, you need to get better about doing PR for yourself, because you're not talking about yourself enough to the company. And I would be like, oh, it's such an ick. Like, who wants to do that? And I relate that to the same as like being a small business, having to pitch yourself to people. But I think it's kind of going, what's something newsy and exciting that I'm excited about and passionate about, and how can I share that in going back to being really authentic and genuine in your communications with people. And I think my big thing is, a lot of people are moving to using AI. My recommendation with using AI is be really careful, because AI sounds like AI. It's very rigid. It uses a lot of fluffy words. And sometimes it doesn't even make sense what's written. So I'd be wary, and I'd err on the side of being paired back with your copy and writing it from a human rather than spitting it into Chat GPT and getting them to do it.
Yeah. Whenever I use it, like, sometimes I might think, okay, I just want an outline for something or whatever. And I'm like, this is just, it sounds so weird. Like it just, yeah. I mean, it can be helpful for some things. And then other
Yeah.
things, I was like, I was actually, it was just really weird. I was almost getting really frustrated and getting passive aggressive with it. I was like, wrong again. I said, try better. Like I was getting so frustrated because it was like, it was so clear what I was asking it. Like I wanted it to have alliteration and I wanted it to kind of, I don't know, I think it was something to do with one of my courses or programs or whatever. And I was like, okay, I want to have alliteration or like an acronym or something that's really easy for people to remember. And it just couldn't get it right. And I was getting
Yep.
so frustrated. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's still got so far to go as far as I'm concerned. But anyway,
I
that's a little
agree.
aside.
I agree. I agree. Even
Yeah.
on Meta, my finger accidentally tapped that Meta AI, and it just starts talking at me, and I'm like, "Stop!" And I had to write to it and say, "Stop being a creep and messaging me, and apologize to me." I'm not buying it.
There's a whole new world out there. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, and so what is working though right now in the world of PR and getting people's brand out there? Like, what are some of the things that are working well, or that you sort of are using or helping people with their business? What would you say?
Um, Magazine teams are pretty lean, so taking that into account, these people are really busy. So editors are really busy, journalists are really busy, they're stretched really thin. So making their job as simple as possible is what I would recommend. So if you've got a story or a project that you're excited about, I would send a couple of images, but probably not over, like not bombard them with images, but I would send them that and a little bit of an outline of what you've got and say, does this interest you? But I should take a step back and go, pick up a magazine or pick up a bunch of magazines so that you know your target, so that you know, oh, I know this magazine is looking for this kind of, or potentially looking for this kind of story, or this is where I see my product fitting, and then target that way. So be really focused on where you see it in the magazine, and also call that out when you email them so that they can go, oh, yeah, I can put that into that section, or, oh, yeah, that might not work for this, but it might work for something else. And I think just like a couple of, like a 2 or 3 sentences on the project, what makes it special. It doesn't have to be overly polished, but just think for them that you're trying to help them. You're basically providing a service because you're pitching a story into them. It has to be newsy, and why is it special to them? And then if they ask you for more images, I recommend being really quick on responding because, like I said, they're really busy. So the quicker you can get back to them, the quicker they can go, oh, yep. Otherwise, if you leave it for um, weeks or whatever, they're going to forget about you. And other people, like I know one editor receives 400 emails a day. Like she just gets bombarded. So if you're prompt in your responses, it really helps everyone win.
And do you think there's still a place for getting publicity in press, like, traditional press in terms of magazines, newspapers, so on? Like, do you think that's still an important place for people to focus on?
Absolutely. Magazines are, and print publications are crucial to um, everyone, consumers, businesses. There's been a growth since COVID because people want to pick up a real magazine in hand rather than be doom scrolling on Instagram. Um, and I think you're getting quality content in these publications. And a lot of people, when they're renovating, are looking at magazines because they trust that source. So they're using them as almost a catalog to go through to tick off boxes to go, oh, where can I get taps, or where can I source carpet from, or I need a new rug for my room if I'm decorating, where could I get that? Magazines definitely have a place in our media terrain. So and Australia's market's tiny as well, so it all kind of fits together really nicely.
And what about at what point in a small business's, cycle or lifetime do you think that they should be looking to engage somebody such as you? You know, do you tend to find it sort of at a particular point where somebody's at capacity in some point and they're like, or they need to get more sales, or and does it lead to more sales? Like, you know, when should people be thinking of reaching out to people such as you to engage your services?
That's a great question. I think when I speak with businesses, they have started thinking about PR and have grown to a point where they're busy with their side of things that they can't manage the PR side and marketing side of things. So they're looking to outsource. And I guess from a pragmatic position, it's when they have a budget that they could consider outsourcing it as well. But it really depends. Some people are busy in the day to day and don't want to handle it, and then other people are really hands on and want to keep going. It can work a few different ways.
And what's the like I said, what is the benefit of engaging someone to do your PR? Like, do you sort of see like a real return on investment for clients in terms of, yes, it actually does translate to more sales or, the bottom line?
Yeah, definitely. Getting that editorial, it works in a few different ways in terms of building credibility and trust. So if people see your product or your shoot in a magazine, you naturally, like, they've been vetted by a magazine, so you have that credibility. The awareness, so you're building your brand awareness. You're going to build a bigger audience, and people are going to put you into the consideration funnel. And then sales wise, definitely, I think one of the most powerful publications is like Sunday Life, because so many people read that magazine, and that you can definitely correlate sales from if you had a product or a project shared in there, you can see the website traffic goes up because so many people read that on a Sunday and they're really engaged in that publication. But all of them work to build that credibility and trust with your audience.
Yeah. Okay. And so I wanted to also ask you some questions as, somebody who's gone out and you've gone, freelance, set up your own sort of agency, working with clients. What does that look like for you? What are some of the lessons that you have learned? We've got lots of people who have got a business that is like a creative service provider type business. What are some of the lessons that you've learned on your journey to having your own business? I'd really be interested to hear about that.
I think going back to when I talked about when I left Newcastle Uni, I think about this quite often as an 18-year-old going, I don't want to do this. Like, I've only been here, but it just doesn't feel right. And I had someone say to me, oh, this is going to be the biggest mistake of your life. Like, can you imagine saying that to an 18-year-old? That's crazy. And I like thought about that and went, oh, like, gosh, what if this is a big mistake? And then I went, no, it doesn't feel right. And I think it goes back to intuition. And every time I've had intuition about something in my business, it has been right. And I always will have conversations with my husband, and he'll go, oh, Lexi, you already flagged this ages ago. Like, you already said this was like a red flag on this, or you already talked about feeling this way about this. And I always think if something's not right, it's for a reason, and listen to that. And I've also found that if I go against that, it's most often a mistake. So definitely trusting your intuition. Setting boundaries is a big thing, because as a freelancer or as a small business owner, you are working around the clock to get your business going and pumping. And I'm really passionate about what I do. So my kids are always like, oh, can you get off your phone, or like, can you get out of your office? And I'm like, no, I've got to do this one last thing. I don't do that all the time. I have set boundaries now. So I don't work Fridays generally. So I have an out of office on my email that says I don't work Fridays. All my clients know I don't work Fridays. Unless there are sofas falling from the sky, do not contact me, or you can contact me, but I'm probably not going to respond because it's my day. Like I that's what I've carved out for myself. And I do work really long hours, and I've always worked really long hours. And I think people do tend to take advantage of that if they know you don't have strong boundaries. But as soon as you start putting those boundaries in place, and I would recommend doing it from the get go with clients and like telling them, these are my work hours. This is how I like to be contacted, i.e., don't be texting me at all hours. I'm not going to respond. Um, and if they do contact you via those random channels, I would always take it back to email if that's your preferred channel. But I want to spend quality time with my family. So setting boundaries is really important. And then being yourself is another key lesson for me because I'm the only one of me. And I'm my business has been always my career's been successful because of me. So being unafraid of being yourself as well.
Yeah. And have you ever, I was just curious, and this popped into my head, like when you've been working with clients, maybe they've had an idea and you've thought, oh, I don't know about that. Like, how do you navigate those kind of conversations with people or those kind of boundaries? Like, because obviously you've got experience and, you might know, like have some other insight that perhaps they don't have. Like, how do you work around situations like that?
Oh gosh, it's tricky and it's happened in like when you're working with a company as well, someone will go, "I've got this really great idea." And it's always like having to listen, like listening to that idea and hearing what they're saying and then digesting that and then going, "Hey, I've taken that on board. I understand why you want to do that. What about if we do this?" And kind of steer it gently and diplomatically as you can and gently as you can because people get really pumped up about their ideas. And then if they like, I find that a lot of people get advice from people that don't work in marketing and go, "Oh, well, this person said this wasn't very good," or "This person said this." And you're like, "Oh, are they a customer? Where is this feedback?" And it's like, "Oh, John Roberts, the bus driver's manicurist best friend's cousin, has told you that." Um, like sometimes just going quiet and letting them talk is the best way. But I do try and be diplomatic and take that on board, and then kind of also have a rationale of, uh, like I've taken that on board, but here's why it might not work.
Yeah.
Tricky.
What have been some of like the most successful campaigns that you've worked on? Whether it's with
Ah,
big brands or smaller brands, perhaps, like what, or, like some of the successful ones that you've kind of either seen like a real direct result because of it, or it's just worked beautifully for whatever reason and it's all come together nicely, or you've really enjoyed it.
well, I think back to that Club Curious with Britney Spears and think, "Oh my gosh, that was crazy." And that was in my early stages of being pregnant with our first child, and I had really bad morning sickness and wrangling 1,000 teenage girls. I'm pretty proud of that because that was hugely successful and won awards. Um, what else? Sabella with Pottery Barn was great because that was realizing something within Australia for a global brand and celebrating our Australian style as well. It was really important. Um, uh, and then working with small business, it's like even producing a beautiful shoot that elevates the brand is really exciting and satisfying, and then seeing how that correlates to the customer, which correlates with sales, is really exciting as well. And I also think about I've come to mind West Elm. We did a partnership with Hotham Ski Resort, and we went in and made over this 90s. Oh, it was horrendous. Don't tell them I said that. Sage green and aubergine interiors. Okay, have you got that? And micro suede. And we went in and reimagined it as kind of a James Bond aesthetic, and it was so great. We partnered with Hames Paint, so brought them on board. We did this like an Eve Klein blue walls, so it was like impact. And then we worked with Reese Duggan, who is West Elm's head of visual merchandising in Australia. And he created this incredible aesthetic that was like such a cozy little home off the ski fields. And off the back of that, we ran a big competition with Hotham to build our database. We pitched that story out to magazines and got a lot of coverage because it was so punchy and aesthetically on the page, it just stood out. And then customers were able to win a trip to stay in that lodge itself. And then we had influencers go and stay in there as well. So it was this multi-pronged approach. And then in store, we did a little display of what that looked like if it was in a home as well. So that was super fun and creative and playful as well. And I think people always respond well to playful. You're not so clinical and serious. It's fun. James Bond on the ski fields. What could go wrong?
And I'm just like having flashbacks of micro suede. Whoever thought that was a good idea? I don't know.
You know what?
Really, it's stuck around for a long time, didn't it?
I feel like I saw it coming back recently, and I was like, no, it's too soon. If ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible.
Exactly.
And aubergine. It was aubergine. Horrendous.
I can see it. And finally, before we go to the last kind of quick 10, what any sort of tips, for either running a small business or sort of software you use, or like what's worked well for you? Any tips, tricks, either in relation to PR or just running a small business? Any other things that you could share?
The first thing that comes to mind is be on top of your accounts and your invoices. I'm pretty ruthless when it comes to that. And I have Rounded, which is this awesome Australian-based app. I tap all of my invoices into there. I can do quotes from there. I can do chase late invoices in there. I can put all my expenses in. It does my BAS for me. I bloody love it. I'm addicted to it, and it puts it in this great dashboard I'm not a finance person, but this has like made me obsessed with numbers in a good, healthy way, not a crazy Christopher Skase way. And then I think it's like having playlists. I have work playlists so that I can have music on. I like having music on. I get really lonely because I'm a real people person. I get really lonely. So I find if I have music on, that makes me feel better, but it has to be kind of gentle, non-lyrical music. That's really helpful. And then if you're looking to pitch to magazines as a designer, or if you've got a product similar, work hard at knowing who you're pitching to. Read the magazine, listen to the podcast, watch the TV show, understand what stories they like, and then go in that way, and research, and invest in professional photography. I can't stress that enough. It elevates your brand, and it's the first thing that customers see beyond word. Like, they will stop at the picture and then read the words, but it's that photo that's going to stop them in their tracks. And I think that's key. And also partnering with other brands is a good way of building your audience. So finding like-minded, non-competitive brands so that you can share audience, whether that's through a competition or talking to each other or hosting each other in some capacity on social. That can be really fun and uplifting for your business, as well as give you an opportunity to expose yourself to a new audience.
Yes, some great tips there. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to the final quick 10.
Yep.
So first of all, Which 5 words best describe you?
Um, Thoughtful, invested, creative, maximalist, and excited.
Great. What's the best lesson you've learned?
Always close doors with intention because you'll be able to open other better doors.
What's your proudest achievement?
My family, we have a really close connection with we've got 2 children, and my husband and I have worked really hard on having a really beautiful, genuine, close relationship with them, and that's the best part of my life.
What's been your best decision?
Marrying my husband, and I met him at a New Year's Eve party, and he knew everyone there, and I only knew one person, and I turned around and forgot his name and then introduced him to everyone as my husband, and they were like, "What the heck?"
It was
Inseparable ever since.
yeah, it's a premonition.
Yeah, totally.
um, who inspires you?
I think, so many people like nature inspires me, art inspires me. In terms of interiors, my mum has always had a really great eye and always created a really beautiful home for us. And I remember bringing friends over as a teenager, and they were like, "Wow, your home's beautiful. Like, there's all these thoughtfully placed things." And I didn't understand that for a really long time until I reflected on their homes, which were quite austere and kind of cookie cutter. Mum's always had a really great eye, and I took a photo in at home at Christmas time, and a friend was like, "Where are you right now?" And I went, "Oh, at mum and dad's." And they were like, "I really want that candelabra." And I was like, "Yeah, that's not gonna happen, my friend." But yeah, mum with her interiors and styles always been an inspiration.
What are you passionate about?
Lots of things. I really love baking. My family, dreaming about going on a holiday, um, my cats, lots of different things.
What dream do you still want to fulfill?
Definitely to travel more. I'm seeing everyone go to Tokyo, and I have never been, and I really, really want to go. Have you been?
Yeah, we just went.
Oh, you just
Yeah,
went.
we went in January and
Oh,
yeah, it was really good. It was really good as a family holiday, we found.
yep,
I mean, we've got 4 children from ages of 16 to 8, and I feel like there was something for everyone.
yep,
And, it's enough of like it's a different enough cultural experience that it's fun and it's interesting, but it's
yep.
not too intense that some countries can be just hard work, and particularly if you've got 4 children for us. I mean, I know your children
Mm.
are older, but yeah, we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, loved it so
I
much.
I don't know if you follow, Michelle Crawford. She's a photographer based in Tasmania. She's currently in Scotland and doing a walking, tour with her daughter, and I've been showing my kids. So Noah's 19 and Scout's 16, and I've got them both on board to do that with me.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
it's gonna
Um,
happen.
what are you reading? I'm curious to know because we should probably mention this. You have got an Instagram feed. Um, Share the name of the feed, and it's about books that you read because you're always reading books, recommending books. And so if anyone's looking for books to read, I highly recommend they follow this feed. So share the name of the feed
Um,
and the books that you're currently reading.
so if you follow my personal Instagram feed, it's Potty Mouth Mama, but it's hashtag PMM, as in Potty Mouth Mama reads, and you can find all of the books. I've got a goal of 20 books this year, so I'm I've kind of zoned out of that at the moment, but I'll be back. And I'm currently reading an Agatha Christie book that my son gave me. I've never read any Agatha Christie, but always wanted to. He's 19 and both of us love reading, so that's good. And I've been reading Beatrix Bakes has a new book out, and I just really love baking. It's like my happy place. I do it for my kids. So she is based in Melbourne. She's a wonderful baker, has worked really hard, and I find her really inspiring, as well as Nadine Ingram of Flower and Stone. That's what I'm reading at the moment.
Great. And what would you say is being like a favorite recent fiction book? Because I feel like you would be a good person to sort of share like a favorite recent fiction book if someone's looking to get back. If somebody hasn't been, I hear this all the time, and I kind of go through phases of this, like not being into fiction, and you want a good book to get you back in.
Yeah. This is old, and it's something that I picked up in, one of those street libraries, those community street libraries. I picked it up there, or maybe at one of my kids' school fairs. I don't know. But it took me so long, and I'm glad I finally read it. Celeste Ng, Little Fires Everywhere. Apparently, it's a TV series, but I've totally missed that. But the book was brilliant. And then I read another book by her, and I'm like, oh, I've got to read everything. And then the other one I really love is David Sedaris. Anything by him is brilliant, especially if you're in a low mood. He's a real crowd pleaser. Even if you read his essay, you can find it online about being addicted to his Fitbit. He's the only author I've been sitting on the train crying with laughter. And I'm sure everyone around me is like, who's this nut job? Because I'm like honestly crying with laughter. He's great. So funny.
I think we all need a bit of that in our lives sometimes. So that's a
Definitely.
good recommendation. What are you listening to? Do you listen to podcasts or otherwise music? What do you like to listen to?
I really love, in terms of podcasts, Conversations on ABC. That is one of my all-time favorites because it covers such a broad terrain. One of the ones that sticks out to me was listening to this UK, I think he's a biologist, I don't know, and he fell in love with platypus because his lecturer started talking about platypus. So he was like, I'm going to go to Australia and learn about platypus. He's launched a book. I've got the book. I haven't read it yet. It's on my bedside, so it's coming soon. But just the way he spoke so lovingly about Australian wildlife made me fall in love with our wildlife, because I think we've become a bit complacent. My Daily Business by Fiona Kalaki is great. How to Fail by Elizabeth Day is great. And then music, I listen to a lot of Bon Iver, Ben Howard, and Lizzie McAlpine.
Okay, I'll have to look them up. I'm really like behind with my music, so always looking for tips. I feel like I kind of stopped listening to music when my son was younger. Actually, he really hated music, and anyway, that's a whole other story. But he didn't like it. So, and then when we got more kids, it was just like music soup. Like if you try to play music and the kids are talking over it, and it was like, no, I just want silence. So I kind of have gone through about like 10 to 15 years of silence of not listening to music, and it's like all my music tastes are like 15 years old, so I need to kind of bring it up to speed a little bit. So
rediscover.
Yeah. So I'm always listening out for new people to listen to. All right, finally, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
I'm trying to think what I tell my kids all the time, because that's probably going to be the same what I would tell myself, and that would be yourself. And don't be afraid to be yourself, and also be safe, because that's all I want for my kids, is to be safe and be happy and be themselves. That's what I would tell my younger self.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Lexi. Can you share what's the best way for people to contact you if they would like to learn more about you or your services, or how you can help them? How can they find you?
Well, this is terrible because I don't have a website, because I always go to build a website and then get busy. So you can find me on Instagram as Lexi, Lexi Kentmann, Kentmann. And you can hit email or DM me there and we can chat. I would love to meet new people. If you are a creative offering services or needing PR help, I love to chat.
Yeah. We'll be sure to add that to the show notes so people can just click on that link and find you straight away. So thank you so much. Loved hearing about your journey and getting your insights into how to build a memorable brand. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.